What's up, guys? Frank from Garageaholic giving you another episode of the E30 M3 S54 behind me. Today we're going to be doing nothing but exhaust. So as you can see here, we've got all of our exhaust laid out. Dan is in the process of installing the headers that have been Cerakoted a bright silver. Here we've got our Cerakoted S54 headers. These actually are amazing quality, very, very good bright silver Cerakote. So we need to get this finished up and welded. He's installed his two oxygen sensors and our exhaust temperature sensor. As you can see, we've also got some really nice high flow cats from PLM. These are EPA approved. And this is a really nice, really slim 2.5 inch stainless steel high flow cats. These are really, really good quality product. We've got our bellows, of course. Everything is V-band clamps on this exhaust. And you can see we've got the little nipple there, the little offset to help align the tubes when you install them. We've only got one here, but we've got the other one already welded to the exhaust headers. We've got two bullet resonators here. These are small, but they are mighty, and they are good to help muffle the raspiness of the S54. We've got 2.5 inch 16 gauge exhaust all the way around, and we got our tubes here. And we are not going to be doing mandrel bent tubings here. We're going to be doing pie cut tubings on this exhaust. So we've got different sizes of pie cuts, all 16 gauge, right? So these are the three different pie cut sizes. You can see them all right there. And we're going to be using these to create the bends that we need on our exhaust, which will be, of course, a Borla exhaust. This is quite a large muffler for this E30, but you know, for the S54 being what it is, I'll try keeping those sounds down just a little bit. And of course, we've got our standard Hartge tip. This is going to be modified quite significantly in order to fit. As you can see here, these are 2-inch inlets, and we're dealing with 2.5 inch on the outputs of the muffler. So we got to figure out a way to stuff 10 pounds of crap into a 5-pound bag and adapt that to work. And of course, line up nicely in the exhaust. So that's basically what we've got here. And we're just going to have to track it all the way back. All right, so we've got our headers installed, right? And we've got our V-band clamps, at least the flanges, installed on the downpipes. We've got our exhaust temperature sensor and our upstream oxygen sensors. Now it's a matter of installing and making sure that we get all of our pie cuts correct. Let me zoom out. In order to get the high flow cats. Now this is going to be the challenging one. This was going to be relatively easy because there's a lot of room right in here to install that cat. But here, might have to install it like right on the output, or maybe even down here. Not sure, don't like the idea of it being down here. As close to the headers as possible is preferable, so that's what we're gonna try to do. You can see our V-band here. We've got the other half of the V-clamp installed and one pie cut. We're rotating it to figure out where the best place is. And on bank 2, we've done the same thing with 3 or 4 actually, V-band clamps, and we're just kind of figuring out where the cat is gonna end up living to be perfectly down to the downpipes. All right, in the last 2 hours, we've made a lot of progress here. Basically, we've gotten both of the cats installed, and we've got a lot of pie cuts here that are bending down to our bellows. Now, keep in mind that the main goal here with this exhaust system is to have it as high as possible, tucked up as high as possible. So we've got all of our bends are as tight to the transmission as possible for a 2.5 inch tube. And we've got our bellows installed and everything is just tacked in place, which is why this is sitting on a jack stand. But you can see here, a good point of reference, let me see if I can do this here, is you can see how tucked up that is relative to your frame rail. If I were to do it from here, you'd see a little bit better. Right? So this is actually as close as it possibly can be. And then what we're going to do is from here, we're going to bring things up a little bit, and that's going to go to our X pipe. Our resonators are going to go right here, and then that's going to go out to our muffler. Now, a muffler is a Borla 400-486. And this guy is a pretty big muffler. I think it's going to keep this nice and quiet. And that's going to come out to here. We're going to have our Hartge tips. So we're really making some good progress. I think that honestly, the hard part is done, where we were able to address this, and we've got this spaced out really nice. We're going to end up separating this quite a bit because we need to make room for the resonators and the additional diameter that resonator is going to create. But, I mean, if you take a wider look at it, it's looking really nice. We've got everything mostly fabricated up. We haven't really connected the parts yet. Let me show you what I've got. So these are my two downpipes. These are catted downpipes, and I need to add a spot for the post-cat O2 sensors, of course, because we're going to be environmentally responsible here. We've got our V-band clamps, and everything is tacked in. All these pie cuts are all tacked in. I've already started welding around a lot of the around the bellows here. And some of these pie cuts, the welding is a little bit sloppy. There's a lot going on in some of these tighter turns where there's a lot of converging mating surfaces between these pie cuts. But overall, it's gonna be a very robust, very stout setup. Now from the downpipes, we've got going to an X pipe. This here is a Carvin X pipe. It's a 2.5 inch free flow X pipe. It's really nice. It was quite expensive, and I think it's going to work out really well because it keeps the tube really close together. And it's not none of that stamped. This is a solid mandrel bent tubing assembly that has TIG welds all around it. So it's a really nice setup. And then as you can see behind that, we have offset resonators. Those resonators are going to be used to kind of calm down the raspiness of the S54, and they're offset, so it keeps things nice and slim. So we're going to be using that in that configuration, and then that's going to be going straight to the muffler. All right, so I didn't really show you a lot of the trials and tribulations in the dozen times that I installed and removed the headers and made some modifications to some of the tubes in order to get that exact pie cut fit, but I got it on. I think that, you know, getting the two downpipes to the X pipe and mated correctly is a huge part of this exhaust, because everything from there out is just a straight dual, so there's no independence there. It's just keeping those two pipes aligned with each other, and that's really not that difficult, especially once you get from the resonators to the muffler. It's pretty simple to connect the dots. So what I want to do now is I want to remove this piece at the headers, and I want to weld it all up and do a final install. So now I am very happy to say that we reinstalled the exhaust, and everything is fully welded up, which means that the V-bands made up to the V-bands on the headers and everything matches. When you usually weld an exhaust, everything kind of tends to warp, and if it warps too much, those V-bands won't line up, and you're going to end up, when you use the V-band clamps to clamp it down, you're actually going to be putting a lot of stress on the welds that you've made, or the pipes themselves, or even the bellows here, the flex joints. You really don't want to do that. So you want to make sure that everything is tacked all the way around, and then you fully weld in little sections here and there, because you don't want the welds pulling too much on the exhaust, creating a warpage that would make a big difference far out from where the weld occurs. All right, let's talk a little bit about the muffler. We've got it sized up here. So we've got our two inlets that are going into the muffler from the resonators, and it's going out through these tips, which, as you can see, are designed differently. These tips here are angled in so that we can get the tips installed, and the tips will look like this. So these are the Hartge tips, and we're going to obviously refinish and polish these up. But this is the tip that our owner wants to use, and it'll end up getting installed something like this. But I don't like the fact that you can see through like that. I think it's a little bit shoddy, and it's not very good workmanship. So what I want to do is I want to weld an interface bracket that goes in between here and connects to here. So it's going to be a little bit thick like that, but it's going to completely seal all of these crevices, and it's going to allow you to have a nice clean interface from here to the muffler. And we're going to be doing that with our arc droid. So what we need to do is we've got a piece of 3/16 stainless steel here, and we're going to take our Hartge tip, and we're going to make our interface bracket by tracing the outside of the muffler, and also making sure that we have the inside set up so we have our shape that we want to have cut. It'll be very simple and very easy using the trace function of the arc droid. This is by far one of the most fun parts of the project, using the arc droid to create the trace function so that we can adapt the output tips of the muffler to the new Hartge tip. Different diameter, different dimensions, and that's what makes this interface bracket so useful and so fun to build. And it was just so easy.
It was just so easy. So we used stainless steel here to adapt the output of the muffler to the Hartge tip. We welded it all up, and then after we finished doing all the welding, we polished it all with a steel mag polishing tool, and it made it look really, really shiny. So now it's done, and we can take this muffler and install it where it belongs.
So now that we've got the muffler completed with the exhaust tips fully welded and integrated, we can now install it into the car in the position that we want it in. If I were to zoom out a little bit, you see that we're gonna be putting this right there. We need to make sure that those tips look perfectly straight and protruding just enough to make a really good impact. Then it's just a matter of connecting the input of the muffler to the output of those resonators. And don't forget, we're going to be putting a couple of V-band clamps right there. And we've chosen that location so that we can actually remove the back part of the exhaust really easily to do any type of work that we need on the differential, subframe, brake lines, or anything like that. It makes things a lot easier by having another disconnect right before the rear subframe.
So what we're doing now is we're just putting the muffler in place where we think the home is going to be. And if there's any obstructions on its way up to its home, then we got to figure that out and make those accommodations. Here, we've got to trim a little bit of the black trim on the rear diffuser for the M3 and get it set. Now we have to turn it in the right location so that we get those tips exactly leveled. And we got to pump that thing up almost to the top of that ridge of the rear skirt. And now we can see exactly what we're up against here when it comes to connecting the dots. A little bit easier said than done. Got to start with those V-bands though. Those V-bands need to be installed first. And again, like I said, they need to be before the subframe for ease of maintenance down the road. Here you can see we have plenty of rotational freedom on the V-bands to move forward.
Okay, so we've got our V-band clamps on. Everything here is tacked from the resonators back. Everything from the resonators forward is fully welded, so I don't have to worry about any type of warpage or anything on that. I've already dealt with that. That's already set. So I've got a weld here, 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 and then of course the two V-bands. But everything is tucked up really nice and tight. And as you can see, if I bring this down just a tiny bit, right? That's really where the exhaust is going to end up hanging. I'm going to make my hangers, and then the exhaust is going to hang just about 1/4 of an inch below that. So if I were to take this and start moving it around like this, you can hear no clinking, no clanking. This is actually going to be a nice free-flowing exhaust. It's going to be hanging without any impedances. So just so you guys know, the key to doing this correctly, and yes, everything is tacked and it looks a little bit sloppy right now, but everything is going to get fully welded, is that you wanted to push this up until it's actually hitting. See how it's hitting right there? That's okay. We want that to be as high as possible because we know that when we install our hangers and we bring this down, everything's gonna settle. And that's exactly what's gonna happen. Now watch this. I'm gonna bring it down, right? Now this is loose, and look how far that's drooped down. And if I were to just get rid of this completely, let me zoom out, you'll see this. See that? Really nice. So this is actually doing its job, right? Once I put the hanger on the muffler, that's really going to stiffen this up again too. That's really important that this actually gets stiffened up by the second hanger that's going to be on the muffler that's going to end up going to this bracket right here. So I'm going to end up welding something here to the muffler that's going to end up really stiffening everything up, and the whole thing is going to be really nice and free flowing. So I've got my V-bands done. I got to now connect the other half of the V-bands to this, to the mufflers, and I am good.
So similarly, we wanted to polish the X-pipe because that did not come polished like the rest of the exhaust. So we're using the same steel and aluminum mag polish wheel that we used before for the tips on this X-pipe. And then we wanted to install it. So installing it is relatively easy as long as you have your hangers and everything set up there. But once you remove it, it all sags down exactly where it should live.
All right, major update here. Again, as you know, the mid section is complete, and we started working on the tail section here, and we've got well, that's okay. We got our V-bands done, and we've got it going out to our very parallel, very shiny dual pipes, and we've got a couple of tacked pipe cuts we have to fully weld, but that's okay. And then that is coming out to our very high, balanced, symmetrical, tucked-in Hartge exhaust.
Installing this exhaust was more or less a two-man job in order to figure it all out for the first time, but after that, it became pretty easy to install it. It's just like a factory exhaust with its factory hangers.
Everything's tight here. Everything is fully welded. Everything is polished. We've got our hanger back here. We've got our tips right smack in the center. And look at this. Nice and it's not hitting anything. The exhaust isn't hitting anything. It is completely unobstructed from the chassis, from anything else underneath the car, and it just moves freely. So it's really, really nice. Now, let's see what this thing looks like with the car on the ground from a view up above. So that's it, guys. This exhaust is done, completed. Rear oxygen sensors installed, no interferences, nice and plugged up. All stainless steel TIG welded, polished up, Hartge tip, Borla exhaust, 2 resonators, 2 cats. This thing is going to sound amazing and be environmentally friendly. Guys, thanks a lot for watching this episode as we've completed the entire exhaust on this E30 M3 S54 project. Stay tuned to the next episode when we actually get the battery and we actually turn this thing on and see what type of electrical gremlins exist in this car before we move on to our first start. Thanks, guys.